Today, we're going to be talking about a divisive issue. Is it okay to crop your photographs? Let's get into it. Whether or not to crop your photos in post is a debate as old as photography itself. Photo purists would say you should get the frame correct in camera. Henri Cartier-Bresson, the father of modern street photography and coiner of the phrase "the decisive moment," had this to say about cropping. If you start cutting or cropping a good photograph, it means death to the geometrically correct interplay of proportions. Besides, it very rarely happens that a photograph that was feebly composed can be saved by reconstruction of its composition under the darkrooms enlarger. The integrity of vision is no longer there. That's a pretty damning take on cropping, suggesting that if you can't compose it properly in camera, it's not worth trying to save it after the fact. However, in the end, there is documentation that Bresson did crop some photos on occasion, but his rule of thumb, get it right in camera. While other photographers would argue that cropping in post allows you to enhance a photo's composition that you may not have thought of on location. Walker Evans talks about his opinion on cropping. Alfred Stieglitz wouldn't cut off a quarter inch of a frame. I would cut any inches off my frames in order to get a better picture. Elliot Erwitt, Magnum photographer, known for his candid black and white photos of ironic and absurd situations and many books with dogs as the subject. There's a famous image of a chihuahua next to its owner's feet. You could see it in the contact sheet that it was taken as a much wider image and then cropped afterwards for creative effect. So what's the right answer? Well, that depends on you. Photography is artistic expression and art is subjective. Only you know what you're trying to convey with an image. I would say that for most photography genres, cropping is a necessary evil. In landscape images, no matter how beautifully composed an image is, there may be stray elements on the edge of the frame that may need to be cropped out. The same is true in street photography, wildlife, sports, portraiture, the list goes on. The only hard exception to this would be documentary or reportage photography. Photojournalists capture a frame to depict a moment in time that is being reported on, and the frame must stay true to its original composition. In general, if you crop an image, you should only crop to make the composition better or possibly remove stray elements from the frame's edge, but you should never crop to drastically change the context of a photo. So what about cropping for artistic expression? Sometimes cropping to a different aspect ratio gives the frame a different feel, which leads me to some cropping I recently did. I started playing around with an aspect ratio that has become quite popular again thanks to cameras like the Hasselblad X2D100 and Fuji's GFX series of cameras, including the new GFX 100RF. It's a ratio called the X-Pan ratio, or 65:24. It's a long, thin crop, thinner than 16:9, and films 2.33:1 aspect ratio. It was introduced in 1998 in a partnership between Hasselblad and Fuji, who revolutionized the camera industry with the X-Pan camera. The X-Pan was unique in that it utilized a dual format in one camera. It produced 24:36 images on 35mm film, but was also capable of producing panoramic 24:65 images using two frames of 35mm film. This essentially made the X-Pan a medium format 35mm camera. The images it produced were breathtaking. Fuji also released its version of the X-Pan in Japan, known as the Fuji X1. That being said, I started experimenting with some images that I took in 2017 on my honeymoon in Italy. I felt that some of my images were a bit wide and had too much info at the top and bottom of the frame. Cropping to the 65:24 aspect ratio really brought focus to the center of the frame and made them more aesthetically pleasing, in my opinion. All of the following images were taken on a Fuji Xt1 with a 16 megapixel sensor, so they're not huge files to begin with, and I'm cropping out about half the resolution. Ideally, you would compose these images in camera with a much higher resolution sensor, like the 102 megapixel sensor found in the Hasselblad X2D100 or Fuji's GFX cameras. Or you could take panoramic shots in a 35mm format and stitch them together and then crop them to the X-Pan format for a much higher resolution. All of that being said, here's a selection of images I took while in Italy. Now keep in mind, I didn't compose these images specifically for this crop, so I chose images where I thought the crop would actually enhance the photo's composition. Hopefully you could see how the 65:24 aspect ratio gave the frames a different, more expansive feel. That's going to be it for this video, but please don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to be notified when future content drops. Thanks for watching. Cheers.